Not only because through modern technology, we can, of course, disseminate Torah all over the world into millions and hundreds of millions and billions of people. First the radio and then television, the fax, and now, of course, the internet. And I might add as in parenthesis, interesting observation that's very telling. In the 60s, a group of Orthodox rabbis, you might want to call them ultra-Orthodox, came out with a proclamation banning television, calling on their constituents and all Jews, in fact, to not to bring this impurity and idolatry, in their words, into their homes. So they wanted the Rebbe, this was in the 60s, to sign many of the great Hasidic, if not all of them, and Lithuanian Rosh Yeshivas, heads of yeshivas were signing. And the Rebbe politely declined. And he said, there's nothing wrong with the television. It's what it's used for. But ultimately, it will be used to disseminate, and not just television, but all technology, to disseminate godliness and goodness. That's its purpose. Of course, we have free choice, so it can be abused like everything. But the television technology isn't bad. Science isn't bad. Nature isn't bad, God forbid. It's how we use it. So, kind of an intro to our discussion now. So I'm saying that nobody benefited in the Torah world like Chabad. First of all, because Chabad, our whole mission is to disseminate and reach out to every Jew and to the whole world for that matter. So thanks to technology, this is now possible. I recall that when the first Tanya classes are given on New York radio, this was a huge thing. A huge thing. Again, the ultra-Orthodox world was kind of aghast. Now they've all embraced it, mind you. They're all using internet, etc. Like everything, it takes them a year or two or longer to understand what the Rebbe is saying. It was always ahead of them. Not just ahead, they were just opposed to it. At any rate, and everybody's doing it. But when it first came out, then the Tanya Shurim on the radio, and then Rabbi Weinberg, who used to give over the class every Saturday night, would give a review of the Rebbe's Farbrengen that day. This was revolutionary. And then came Chassidus on the telephone, if you recall. And every city in the world where Chabad was, where there was a Jewish population that was interested, or if not, they would make them interested, inspire them to be. You could dial on your phone a whole menu of all kinds of classes and languages. And now, of course, it's the internet. So that's number one, that Chabad, this is the greatest blessing, and it's prophesied. I'm not going to go into this now. We spoke about it. It's prophesied 2,000 years ago in the Zohar that a time would come when technology would abet in dissemination of Judaism, not just as a means, again, through using radio, television, internet, but the very science itself, the very teachings of science, which point to the oneness and unification of all of existence, will abet, will contribute to the knowledge of God, which is happening before our very eyes, beginning with quantum physics, which we've spoken about many times. In addition to all this, what I want to tell you is with my own children, how nobody like Chabad is benefiting on a personal level from technology, and that's because, as you might have realized or thought of, no one like Chabad, there's no community in the world, Jewish or otherwise, like Chabad, that has its sons and daughters in every corner of the world, who go on one-way tickets to very remote locations. So in the old days when shluchim used to go out, that's it. You know, the contact with their parents was by mail, with letters. Nobody called. The phone calls were a fortune in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and the 80s. It was once a year, twice before Paysach, before our holidays, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. You called. And today, FaceTime and Zoom, we're in touch all the time. So for us personally, my wife and I, it's a great blessing. We have children on Shlichus in Seattle, the other end of the United States. And we're growing up with our grandchildren. We're seeing them. They know us. daily contact. It's an incredible blessing that's keeping us together. And this is no accident, that this kind of incredible unity that's now possible between people, the ends from one end of the world to the other, it's happening now because we are on the threshold of Mashiach's coming. That's why it's happening. That's why it's revealed now, why it's possible now. Because the Messianic era is all about a time of, in fact, I ask you to pick one word to fill in my sentence. What would you say? You would say unity. That's what it's all about. Between God and creation, between people. Oneness, the truth of Hashem Echad being revealed. That's the Messianic era. And therefore it's manifest in the days before Mashiach comes, quite literally, a unified world, instantaneous, virtual connection. And many other components to this as well, which you won't go into right now. So, why am I sharing this? Because just considering that in a few days, I'm going to be at the end of the world. And as far as you're concerned, in your living room, dining room, or bedroom, wherever you're watching this, nothing changed. Whether I'm sitting here in MTC upstairs or in a quarantine hotel in Sydney, we'll be talking to each other, connecting, undiminished. What an incredible thing that is. What a blessing. Okay, so let's begin our discussion. You all have the text? Today's Parsha, Parshas Acharei, Souls Afire. Well, that sounds good. Let's get all fired up. So, Terry, would you begin reading for us? A moment of drama. You got it there?
Yeah, I have it. The 7-day dedication of the sanctuary was over, and despite the expectations of the Jewish people, the divine presence had not become manifest. Even after the sacrifices were offered on the 8th day, the hopes of the people had not been fulfilled.
So let me just give the background. So what are we talking here about? These are the events described in the opening words of this week's Parsha. What's the story? So the Exodus took place almost exactly a year prior to this story. This story takes place on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, after the Exodus. They left a year earlier on the 15th of Nisan. So it's a year, less 2 weeks, that this event takes place. In the interim, they've received the Torah that took place 7 weeks after the Exodus, hence Shavuos. And they received many commandments. There was the debacle of the golden calf. A lot of history, a lot of dramatic events in this first year in the desert. The game plan was initially, it would be only 1 year in the desert, and they would then go directly into Israel. Of course, that didn't happen. He sent the spies, and there was a setback for 40 years. But this is before all of that. This is the first year they got the Torah, and they have built, this is after the golden calf, they build, as per God's very detailed instructions in the Torah, the Mishkan, the sanctuary for God. So there was a 7-day, this is all commanded by God, a 7-day dedication service. Moses, every single day, took apart and put together the sanctuary, performed all the service, kind of induction. It was education. And then it's the 8th day. Offerings are brought every single day. It's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And the divine presence isn't manifest. It's just a building. It's a beautiful building. It's a beautiful, elaborate, collapsible temporary structure interlocking with tremendous detail described. And we've all seen it. We've all studied it. And the divine presence isn't manifest, and the people are crestfallen. They're wondering whether it's all that they've done in building the sanctuary has not elicited God's forgiveness, because this is, again, very soon after the golden calf. And the idea was to build a sanctuary and bring the offerings, and then God's presence is once again be manifest amongst the people and through them to the world. It hadn't happened yet. So something then occurs. This is all in the same day. It's a Sunday. If you want to know exactly, and you should know, it's a Sunday, first day of the week, first day of the month, of Nisan in the year 2449, to be precise, since creation. Let's continue and see what happens. Continue, Terry.
Aware of the people's disappointment, Moshe and Aaron entered the sanctuary and prayed, and then God's glory was revealed to all the people. Fire came forth from before God and consumed the burnt offering. In grateful acknowledgement, the people saw this and raised their voices in praise.
Actually, what happened was, in more detail, Aaron was reluctant to go in. He felt that he was responsible, because again, this whole thing is the fear, and this is the truth, why God's presence wasn't revealed is because of the aftermath of the golden calf, of the betrayal, of the idolatry. Aaron felt responsible because you know the story. He tried to delay them unsuccessfully and felt that he was at fault. And Moses assured him that he wasn't. And only after he brings him into the sanctuary and they pray, that all of a sudden the divine fire descends from heaven and consumes the offering on the altar. The people see this and they raise their voice in praise and they bow down and all is wonderful, but only for a fleeting moment. The great joy is marred by a tragedy. Continue, Terry, the next paragraph.
Then two individuals sought an even deeper bond with God. Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, each took his fire pan and placed fire and then incense upon it and offered it before God. It was strange fire which God had not commanded them to offer. Fire came forth from before God and consumed them, and they died before God.
So this day, which should have been the happiest day, perhaps in our history, the culmination of the Exodus, the building of the home for God, God manifest on earth, forgiveness for the golden calf, and so on, turns into tragedy. Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Avihu, unbidden, the strange fire you just read, meaning strange or foreign, in that it was not asked of them. They bring this offering, the incense, the sacred incense, and another heavenly fire issues forth from God, and they died. The response, continue reading.
Moshe praised them in their death, telling Aaron, "This is the meaning of what God said. I will be sanctified by those close to me, and I will glorified before the entire nation."
They're missing a word, and I will be
glorified.
Yes, I'll be glorified before the entire nation. So God had told that to Moses, I'll be sanctified, but implying somehow sacrifice. So Rashi explains that Moshe told Aaron, continue.
Rashi explains that Moshe told Aaron, "I knew that the sanctuary would be consecrated by those in communion with God. I surmised that this would be either me or you. Now I see that they are greater than we are."
So Moses says to Aaron, in comforting him, these were his children, two of his four children. He said, I thought it would be you and I that would have to give up our lives for this to happen. But I see it's not. It's your sons and they are greater. And fortunate are you, privileged that you had these two children. And I guess implicit is you brought them up with this degree of devotion. And so he sought to comfort him. The Torah goes on to say that Aaron is silent and accepts this in silence. One of the great praises of Aaron. There wasn't protest, or neither was there pride, in the sense that my children, not a word, complete silence in acceptance of the divine will. A very, very dramatic and powerful episode, for want of a better word, in our history. So that's the story, that's the opening words of the Parsha. Thank you, Terry. Now we're going to call upon, just 1 second. Looking here at our list of wonderful readers, so who do we have? Okay, Robert Burke, you haven't read in ages, and you're our president. I just, before you speak, I just want to say that you took upon yourself this job very lovingly. when I asked you in Michael's honor, and just know that you're a cause of great nachas to him and all of us coming together each Sunday, inspired by him. Because of him, he made this class happen. He pushed me to make it happen, and would do so as I told you, every Saturday night. We'd have this little exchange, and he'd look at me and I go, no, and he'd go, yes, you have to. I said, okay. And so the class went on, and he would send out the text, and so thank you, Robert. It's much appreciated. Okay, please go ahead, read.
Insatiable yearning. The passage is paradoxical. On one hand, the conduct of Aharon's sons appears undesirable, as obvious from the punishment they received and is reflected in our sage's discussion of the sin of Aharon's sons.
So on the one hand, just reading the text, it was a strange fire that God had not commanded. Was it a good thing or bad thing? It was wrong. Moreover, he quotes our sages that talk about the chet. They use the word sin. I should point out there's different words for sin. They don't use the word transgression, avera or avon, but chet, which is very subtle. But still, as subtle as that term might be, it's negative. Yet, go on.
But it also appears that there was a positive dimension to their efforts. For Nadav and Avihu had been designated for unique divine service, and Moshe himself stated that they were greater than he and Aharon, and that it was through their sacrifice that the sanctuary was consecrated.
So Moshe is comforting Aaron. He's saying, this had to happen. This is part of the sanctification of the sanctuary. I thought it would be us. It's not. It was them. They are greater than us. So is it a virtue or is it a failure? It seems contradictory in the story. So let's continue.
This difficulty can be resolved based on the commentary of the Or HaChaim, who explains the death of Nadav and Avihu as follows.
The Or HaChaim was a famous commentator. He lived 250 years ago. Rabbi Chaim ben Attar, one of the famous Sephardic sages, and he wrote a commentary on the Chumash, one of the most beautiful and most popular commentaries on the Chumash. So there he writes, quote, go ahead.
They came close to a sublime light with holy love and died because of it. This is the mystic secret of God's kiss through which the righteous die. Their death was equivalent to the death of the righteous, but there was one distinction. It is the kiss which approaches the righteous, while in their instance, it was they who approached it. Although they understood that they would die, they did not hold back from coming close and clinging to God in a sweet bond of love to the extent that their souls departed.
So this is big news. This is a very profound insight, because if you read the verse on a literal, simple level, it sounds like they were punished. They brought an offering that was not asked of them, and God, takes their lives. Not so, explains the Or HaChaim. What happened was the natural consequence of what they did. Their souls expired in a blaze of longing and communion, divine kiss with God, which is true, he says, of every tzaddik's passing. The Torah describes this graphically with this, not the Torah, but the oral law. In the Midrash quoted by Rashi, we find this description with respect to the death of both Moses and Aaron later. Moses lies down upon the couch, and there's candles lit and so on. He closes his eyes, and God, and also Miriam, mind you, and God draws his soul. Hence the kiss of death. The origin of that, by the way, is this. That's where this expression comes from. The kiss of death is not meant virtuously, but its origin really is a death where the soul in communion and unity with God just merges with God and leaves the body, spills out of the body. The body can't contain the rapture. This is really what's happening. The kiss of death, described here, means the experience of the divine is so overwhelming that the soul simply spills out of the body. And we know this from, that people can receive news, wonderful news that they weren't expecting, that's beyond them, and the person can die from it. Because the heart can't contain it, the mind can't contain it. And the soul spills out, and the excitement. Imagine meeting a sibling that you thought was perished in the Holocaust, and you just bump into them. This can be, so this was the kind of thing. Similarly, not the same, but the same idea, that not of an Aviyu went out in this blaze of divine longing and ecstasy. Continue.
Hasidic thought develops this concept, stating that our love of God must involve two phases. Ratzu, a powerful yearning for connection with him, and Shuv, a commitment to return and express God's will by making this world a dwelling for him.
Let's explain these two terms, Ratzu and Shuv, where they come from. They come from the description of the prophet Ezekiel. Ezekiel, in the famous prophecy, vision rather, where he sees the heavens open up, and the entire Kabbalah is based on his description. We read that description on Shavuot, not surprisingly, because Shavuot, the heavens opened up and everybody saw the divine, the chariot, the angels, etc., the Merkava. The entire Kabbalah is based on this, and Chassidus, as well as the vision of Isaiah, but Ezekiel's vision is more elaborate. So what does he describe? He sees the souls going out and returning, going out and returning. What's he talking about? We just learned what that means. It means that on the one hand, we have to have this longing for God, for transcendence, but that must be balanced with, yes, but God's desire is we sanctify the body in the world, we bring that inspiration back. This is constant. Ratzu and Shuv, that's why the human heart expands and contracts. It's actually a reflection of the soul's longing and then return to carry out the divine purpose. Nadav and Avihu was one way. They had the longing, but not the return. And as we'll see, then, when the sanctuary was built and God's presence was manifest, that's what was required, but not thereafter. Let's continue.
As the Orach HaChaim explains, Aharon's sons had reached an all-encompassing level of Ratzu, a longing to cleave to God. This should have been followed by a turn toward Shuv, expressing this bond in their lives. Their sin was not the closeness they established with God, but the fact that the connection did not bear fruit. They died without having expressed this bond in the realm of ordinary experience. For God's intention is that the deepest levels of love for him be demonstrated in an appreciation for the godliness that inhabits every element of creation, and in serious efforts to enable this godliness to become manifest.
So he's saying, so what was the sin? The sin is that's not the model for us. The Hebrew term, again, is chet. I didn't say that earlier, but chet is the term. The term chet, which commonly translated as sin, and as I mentioned, there's many words for it. The word chet also means to miss the mark, to be close to the target, but not quite. That's not a transgression. To miss the mark is not wrong, it's just not perfect. So it's a chet in that it wasn't balanced with the return, with engagement of the world. So if it's not a model for us to emulate exclusively, it is right and was right for them. How else ought one respond to a time when to an experience with God's manifest for the first time ever on earth? Since, mind you, since the giving of the Torah was temporary, if not longing and attachment. Let's continue.
Can I just say that the golden calf is also referred to with the same word, right? The sin of the golden calf, the chet egel, is the same. It means the same, like a.
Yes, we did speak about it. We explained. We explained the very subtle for not everybody, but the highest rung, the highest level of the people, the golden calf was a virtuous thing. Missed the mark a little bit, but we explained that on another occasion. Okay.
The positive dimension of Nadav's and Avihu's striving is alluded to in the phrase, a strange fire which God had not commanded them to offer. Their divine service was strange and on such a high level that God could not command the Jewish people to seek such a rung.
Okay, keep on going.
The closeness to God which resulted from this divine service dedicated the sanctuary, endowing it with the potential to inspire others to similar heights. For this reason, our Torah reading begins by mentioning the death of the two sons of Acharei when they drew close to God. The Torah reading focuses on the divine service of Yom Kippur, the day on which every Jew draws close to God. As an introduction, the Torah cites the closeness achieved by Acharon's sons, for their act opened a channel enabling all Jews to connect to God with such intensity.
Okay, let's explain what he's saying. The next verses go on to describe the service of Yom Kippur, where God says, this is the way you approach. Yom Kippur is the one day into the Holy of Holies, the incense, the high priest, and so on. So what is being conveyed here? What's being conveyed here is a Jew's natural response to life is the desire for transcendence. Yom Kippur is just that. We're like angels. We don't eat or drink on Yom Kippur. It's not a punishment. It's because we transcend food and drink. It's the soulful, most soulful day of the year. Not of an Avi or the epitome of that. And as the Rebbe just said now, they endow us with that example to follow. Now here's the critical point. We said, however, it's not the model, because their chet was they didn't then re-engage the world. True. Not to be expected that they should or could. And because at this moment, it's the first time experiencing the divine, it has to be a one-way ascent, and should be. Here's the thing. The reason what happened to them remains kind of the opening statement to Yom Kippur, and the message to us is this. The only way we will be successful when we engage the world to bring godliness, to be a light unto the nations, to sanctify the world. The only way we are successful is when we don't want to be here. We're only here because that's our mission. Where do I want to be? I want to be in the Beis HaMedrash. I want to be in the shul. I want to be in prayer. My world is Yom Kippur. My world is Shabbos. My world is transcendence. My world is the soul. That's what I have to want. If that's what you want, okay, now take that and inspire the world with it, sanctify it, elevate it. Don't be part of it. Elevate it. You can't elevate it if you're part of it. We can only elevate the world when we maintain our unique difference and distinction. And God knows, if we forget, the world reminds us. The world reminds us that we're not part of the world, we're different, we're foreigners, we're strangers. No matter how long we can live in a country, 1,000 years makes no difference. On a dime, we are foreigners, strangers, the words of the verse here. So we don't want the world to remind us of that. We want to be aware of that. Yes, we are souls, came down to the world on a mission. We will never be comfortable in this world, never be at home, ever, until God's at home, when the world becomes a sanctuary for him, when the world will become a home for him, and a home for every human being, when spirituality will be seen in all things, when we will have elevated the world and revealed its inherent godliness, bringing heaven to earth, then we'll be at home. Until then, we're on this great mission. And that we learn from Nadav and Avihu. That's their message to us. Kinderlach, what are we doing here? We're souls, we're neshamas. food, drink, money. That's not reality. Holiness is reality. God is reality. The mission is to reveal that within the food and drink and money and the body and the physical desires and human sexuality and everything else that makes up the physical existence. The mission is to reveal, dedicate all of that to Hashem, or restating that, elevate the sparks, or restating that, reveal godliness in it. That's something else entirely. So it isn't about the physical per se, it's to reveal the spirituality in the physical. So who teaches us that? Constant reminder, not of an avil. That's how it's got to start. Then we're told it's not the model completely. That's how it begins. But then you got to bring it back and bring it down and be on this great mission. But remember, we are all not of an avil. We're really yeshiva bachrim. We're seminary girls. We're yeshiva students. We're not part of this scene. We're never comfortable. We're never at home. Till Mashiach comes, we're not at home. We're at home only with holiness and with sanctity. And to the degree that we reveal that in the world, that becomes a home. Slowly but surely, transforming it mitzvah by mitzvah. Okay, let's continue. Thank you, Robert. Who do we have?
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
I agree with everything you're saying.
I'm glad you agree.
What? Except, there's an except. God hid himself. He is not revealed. We have to find him.
That's the whole point. That we're on a mission.
But you spend your whole life trying to find godliness. You're saying that you have to, I can't even express it. You're saying that I understand what you're saying, that you have to be, you have to be like a yeshiva student but yet, if you're not born into that world, like you spend your whole life trying to find God, never mind trying to be a yeshiva student. And then it just...
One second, hang on. Let me qualify something here.
Please.
Not to find God, he's everywhere.
But he's concealed everywhere.
But that's the point. We're on a mission to reveal his presence.
Okay, but that alone takes all your energy.
Pardon?
That alone takes my energy. To find God in things that I just don't get. Never mind,
it's supposed to take all your energy. Our whole energy, our whole mission is to do mitzvahs and sanctify the world. We should be doing mitzvahs all the time. What are mitzvahs? Mitzvahs are the means by which we connect to Hashem in every part of life. So therefore we have a code of Jewish law, exactly. A code of Jewish law that tells us, so how do I engage this moment? What do I do? How do I find God in this moment? We'll never figure it out. That's why he gave us the Torah. Now, if we read the Torah and we still don't know, so there are other mechanisms. There's a mentor, there's all kinds of, but there's a whole system in place for one objective. How in every moment of life do I do the godly thing, which means to say, find Hashem here and reveal him. That's what entire Torah is about. As you know well, the word Torah means instruction manual. What's instruction manual? Here's how you find me, says Hashem, in every moment in life. Birth, death, and everything in between. Yeah, and you're right. That should take all our energy. That's all we're all about. Which means that just to live a physical existence, when things go well, everybody's healthy, making money, we're getting glory, and we have pleasure and sensuality. For the Jew, that doesn't cut it. That's living in the concealment. That's living just in the physical without revealing its inner meaning. And that's not our world. And we should feel uncomfortable in a world that's purely hedonistic. It's not our place. Our job is to reveal godliness. And yes, it should consume all of our energy in our entire life in a joyous, happy way. It shouldn't exhaust us. On the contrary, every mitzvah makes us stronger.
I understand, but if you really work on it, it is exhausting. It's like you have to continuously think all the time. There's a God in the world, and that's why these things are happening.
It shouldn't exhaust you. Each mitzvah gives you more strength. On the
Okay.
contrary, it's not like it's because the more you are connecting to Hashem, the more you will see him in everything else, and the more edifying and empowering it is. This moment, on a psychological level, very simply, if you have the satisfaction, let's use the word satisfaction, this is a healthy satisfaction, of knowing that this situation at this moment, you engaged it the way Hashem wants, then you're at peace with it. The results may not be what you thought, you hoped, or whatever. It's not my business. Did I do this? Did I say? Did I do? Did I go? Did I come the way it says in the Torah? Completely at peace. It doesn't exhaust you. Why doesn't it explain? If life is about the acquisition of whatever money and the beautiful home, that's all it is. Just so I'm exhausted getting it. Often I don't get it. There's ups and downs. I make money, lose money. I'm being torn in 1,000 directions. How many people can say life is perfect the way I want it? Yes. There may be moments of that, but then there's children, I have to tell you, health issues, we get older, and there's children, there's always things that challenge our little castle. And some people have huge, God forbid, health and livelihood issues. So life is a disaster. Could be very easily to one degree or another, and it is. But if life is your world, my job is to reveal your presence everywhere. How do I do that? You told me how. I follow. That's it. I'm at peace with the moment. I sanctify the moment to the degree that I can on your instruction. The result is your business. I know the end it'll all work out, but I'm at peace. This is not exhausting. This is the only way to live that is truly, can sleep at night and a deep sense of serenity, because it's a life of connection, of purpose, and I did what I had to do. The health issue is there.
I'm not going to argue.
I lost the money, but if that's your will, and I engaged it in this moment, the way you want me, that's the purpose. So on the contrary, if we think about it, a life of Yiddishkeit doesn't exhaust. It's the only serenity. You can be in Siberia, in a labor camp, and there's one question: how do I serve you here? What do I do now? Make a bracha on the water, smile to my fellow inmate. That's how I'm serving you. That moment's meaningful and sanctified, and he's at peace. Whereas if it's all the physical stuff, I'm in prison, I'm in jail, they beat me, he's destroyed. He's destroyed. My nose gets bent out of shape every 5 minutes because it's not going my way. This is the true serenity, the true peace. Yeah. Okay.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
We think about God that is everywhere, and this is a Hasidic concept of Ein Sof. And also related to this situation is Ashkaga Pratit. But I have learned recently another concept. It's called Tzimtzam. And Ashkaga Pratit is that God has a personal control over everyone. But Tzimtzam is that God remove himself from the world and there is no control. How can we deal with this if there is no control?
Very important. Very important to point out to you. Tzimtzum does not mean he removed himself. Tzimtzum, for those that are Tzimtzum is this word in Kabbalah and Chassidus that means literally contraction. But Chassidus explains that the Tzimtzum is not literal or real. It's only from our perception, that we don't see Hashem. But he is present in creation, fully engaged. To give an example of that, Chassidus gives to understand, illustrate this as with the following. A teacher, a master, a teacher, wants to convey, is conveying a very deep idea to his disciples. The idea is totally beyond them. He can't convey the idea the way the teacher has it in his mind. So what does the master do? He tells a parable. He gives a story, a parable of a princess and a king, whatever the story is. So what's happening here? When he says the story, All the students are getting is a story. Eventually, if they think deeply into the story, they'll understand it's all a metaphor, and behind every detail of the story is a very profound idea. That takes a long time for the students to discover that. It could take 40 years if it's a true master and a true student. But here's the point. For the teacher, while the teacher is telling the parable, does it conceal for the teacher the idea? No. For the teacher, it's every detail of the story is nothing, every detail of the parable is nothing other than a reflection of the idea. So there's a concealment from the perspective of the listener, of the student, the disciple, but not from the perspective of the master. So when we speak of the tzimtzum, Hashem conceals himself, it's not from his perspective. He's totally engaged. It's only we don't see it. You follow? A very simple example would be this. Do you see my face now? I'm concealed from you. I'm not concealed from me. Did I put an object in front of my face? Didn't hide me from me. Didn't change me at all. You don't see me. But I'm still me to me. So Hashem is divine providence, as you mentioned, and all the things you said are all true, notwithstanding the tzimtzum. All the tzimtzum means is it's lost on us, and it's our job to reveal them. That's the whole point. The point is mitzvah by mitzvah to reveal Hashem in the world in truth, to reveal the truth, that the world is just a parable, and every detail of it is a reflection of him. So we are all the disciple revealing the depth of the parable. The world is like a parable. Is that kind of clear a little bit? A little bit?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, good question, a very important one. Okay, so let's continue. Ricky, would you read for us 2 lessons? Do you have the text?
No, I have to check. Hold on.
All right. You have it? All right.
She accidentally left.
You actually left. Okay. So we're going to ask, what just said, somebody else had in mind over here. Ethel, 2 lessons.
2 lessons, 2 names.
Oh, sorry, I have it, but it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so Ricky, go ahead, and Ethel, you'll read the next one.
Now I have to access it, so it'll take me a minute.
All right, so Ethel, please read.
Yeah.
In retrospect, the divine service of Aaron's sons provides us with 2 lessons. A positive one that every Jew has the potential to draw as close to God as they did. And B, a negative one that such service alone lacks the vital element of shuv, application within the context of our world. There are some who refer to this Torah reading as Acharei, and others who call it Acharei Mos. It is possible to say that the use of one name or the other depends on which of the dimensions is chosen for emphasis. Acharei means after. The height of connection reached by Aaron's sons generated the potential for similar closeness in the Jewish people afterwards.
So if we're calling the Parsha Acharei, we're saying follow after them. They're at least part of the model they are bequeathing us. As I said before, we can only be successful in the world. We always remember we're on a mission. We're not part of it. So Acharei means follow them. Acharei Mos, by contrast, that's the other custom, stresses the other side of the coin. Follow them only partially as a foundation, but it's not the whole equation. Continue.
Acharei Mos, after the death of, by contrast, places the accent on the negative outcome that resulted from the failure to complement closeness to God with a commitment to develop an awareness of him in this material world.
So don't just take their model enduringly, it's a foundation, but you complement it by then taking that inspiration and bringing it to the world. In other words, Shabbos is once a week. It's not 7 days a week. Once a week transcendence, now then bring that holiness into the weekday for the next 6 days. As we always say, that's why we make the wine spill. Havdalah. The wine should spill from the cup into the plate below. That's the custom. The holiness of Shabbat should spill down, the opposite of this way, but downwards into the week. Okay, thank you. Ricky, got now Lubavitch custom?
Yes, Lubavitch custom is to call the Torah reading Acharei, highlighting the closeness with God that can be achieved by every Jew. For the core of every Jewish soul is at one with God, inseparably linked. This bond surpasses that established through the observance of mitzvahs, for although mitzvahs create a bond between the commanded and the commander, the two remain separate entities. In essence, however, the Jews and God are absolutely at one, and this is the level of consciousness which surfaces on Yom Kippur.
Okay.
On this plane, a Jew's obedience to God is not a matter of choice for which there is reward or punishment, but a purely natural response, a simple expression of the inner self. As Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev would say, it is not a commitment to observance which prevents a Jew from eating on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, which Jew wants to eat?
Okay, so what is he saying? He said, Chabad, we call it Acharei, not Acharei Mos, because we are emphasizing that this oneness with Hashem that Nadav and Avihu embodied, that must remain clearly the foundation of our identity. And as he said before, higher even than mitzvahs. What do mitzvahs do? Mitzvahs reveal that oneness to the world. That's what mitzvahs do. They reveal our Jewish core, which is one with Hashem in the physical world, sanctifying the world, light unto the nations, and so on. Mitzvahs don't make us Jewish, they reveal our Jewishness. So he quoted here Rabbi Levi Yitzchak that said, as I said before, not eating on Yom Kippur is not like afflict yourselves and hurt or humble yourself. It's a natural outcome. Who wants to eat on Yom Kippur? We're nourished by the soul. Here we're really ourselves. We're in a body, the body has to eat. That's not the real me. The real me doesn't have to eat. That's Yom Kippur. Then comes after Yom Kippur. Continuing. From Yom Kippur.
And from Yom Kippur, this connection can be continued Acharei, afterwards, shifting the entire spectrum of observance to a higher level. The interconnection between a Jew and God can suffuse every aspect of life.
Stop. So now you're saying, what's even high? Acharei means even higher. Higher than this Yom Kippur? Yeah. What's higher than Yom Kippur? If you bring that connection in the everyday and make the body part of it and illuminate the world, that's even higher than the soul's connection per se. You follow?
Mm-hmm.
When it does,
yeah, the struggle of day-to-day existence cannot threaten dedication to the eternal. For in this state, a mortal is continuously connected to God with no possibility of separation.
And on the contrary, the world is actually part of that connection. That's not bringing this out so slow. The world is part, not overcoming the world. We reveal that connection in our body, in our physical acts, in the world at large. We bring Yom Kippur to the world, in other words. That's what he's saying. So let's conclude. Mankind as a whole
will experience such continuous connection in the era of the redemption, when the godliness which permeates the world will be revealed.
So then again, the tzimtzum we spoke about earlier, that conceals the presence of God from our perspective, we will have illuminated it. We will see the parable for what it is. It's a parable for a deep truth. The world is a parable. Every detail is an expression really of a divine truth, of a divine attribute of the presence of Hashem. When will we have achieved that goal? That's the Messianic. Mashiach comes, continue, quoting Isaiah now, the world
will be filled with the knowledge of God like the waters that cover the ocean bed. Surrounded by manifest godliness, mankind will naturally and spontaneously choose to obey his voice.
Yeah, okay, the words he used, obey, sounds like it's more than service. This is oneness, this is joy, this is the ultimate connection. More than just obedience. It's a word he uses here, but it seems to imply something lesser. It's more than obedience. It will be a loving relationship of a natural expression of our oneness And that will embrace every aspect of creation, like the water covers the ocean floor, the metaphor of Isaiah. Okay, my dear friends, have a wonderful week. See you, God willing, from Sydney next week. Stay tuned as we will send you the text through Robert, and we'll connect again. Okay.
Have a
Safe
wonderful
travels.
trip,
trip,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Have a great time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, your life and your home life on air on Friday at 5. It was so inspiring, really. Yashkoyach to you and your whole family. Should have a lot of continued nachas.
Amen. Thank you, Ricky, and everybody, you from yours, nachas and children, and grandchildren,
Amen.
only good
Enjoy
things.
your family. Enjoy every minute.
Thank you.
Thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you for your good question, Tim.
Is Feivel the midget still alive?
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
You described such a beautiful home life, Rabbi. You come from such a wonderful background. That's just wonderful.
Baruch Hashem. Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Great
inspiring.
privilege to be brought up.
I'm sure, yeah. Send your parents our best from Montreal.
We'll do that. We'll do that.
Okay. All the
Bye,
best,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, readers, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.